Heard every week on the amateur radio bands all around the world, broadcast on low-power AM and FM stations across the United States, and one of the first podcasts on the Internet. We are This Week in Amateur Radio, the worldwide premier amateur radio and technology news magazine and bulletin service of the air. Here are the stories for release around the earth as we come to air with edition number 1402 of This Week in Amateur Radio. The FCC will be voting soon to expand unlicensed operations in the 6 gigahertz band. We will have the details. The ARRL is inviting amateurs to join in celebrating America's 250th anniversary with a year-long contest. The FCC has issued a reminder to the new experimental shortwave stations that they need to identify. KLOE-AM in Kansas goes dark and calls it quits after its tower is blown over in a storm. Nominations are open for the 3 Heritage CQ Magazine Hall of Fame Awards. The FCC bans the sale of all imported drones into the United States, and there are changes to drone regulations in the UK as well. We will have all the details. The ARRL declares 2026 as the year of the club, and one amateur radio club is helping to build newcomers' confidence in the hobby by teaching CW. All this and a lot more is straight ahead on today's edition of This Week in Amateur Radio. These headline stories will come to you in a moment along with this week's special features. We'll visit with Bruce Page, KK5DO, and get an update from AMSAT on what's new with all of those amateur satellites in orbit. Australia's own Onno Benshoff, VK6FLAB, and Foundations of Amateur Radio will have part 4 of his series called Building a Shack. This week he takes a look at coaxial cable alternatives. Our own amateur radio historian, Will Rogers, K5WLR, returns with another brand new edition of A Century of Amateur Radio. This edition takes a look at the use of CQ, which is used as a general call for initiating a contact. This took time to become an acceptable practice in the early years. Serious operators frowned on its use, mostly because it had been used to excess in the old days among the little boys with what they called squeak boxes, usually in exceeding long and sparsely identified calls. This will be part 2 of the edition entitled Call and Card. We will have a look at this month's volunteer monitoring report, and we will stop by and visit with Bill Sawyer's AJ8B in the DX Corner with all the latest news on DXpeditions, DX, upcoming contests, and a lot more. That's all straight ahead as North America's premier amateur radio and technology news magazine and bulletin service, This Week in Amateur Radio, takes to the air right now. Reporting from our headquarters studio just outside of Albany, New York, I'm George, W2XBS.
And reporting from our news bureau in Salem, Ohio, this is Denny Haight, NZ8D.
And reporting from our news bureau in Naugatuck, Connecticut, where we have cloudy weather, and I just got done checking into Roll Call. Every Saturday morning we do that on 7.255 on the East Coast Amateur Radio Service. I'm Steve Sawyer, K1 FRC.
Reporting from our studio in Orland Park, Illinois, where the cold weather has me thinking about returning to Florida, I'm Mike Nicolich, K9DXM.
And reporting from our news bureau just outside Albany, New York, in the Geek Cave studios, I'm Rich Lawrence, KB2MOB.
And reporting from the HamTV studios in Knoxville, Tennessee, I'm Josh Marler, AA4WX.
And reporting from a windy Detroit, New York news bureau, I'm Eric, Kilo Delta 2, Romeo Juliet X-Ray.
And reporting this week from our news bureau in Syracuse, New York, at station K2MST in the Museum of Science and Technology. And let me tell you, the Lake Effect snow machine has been in overdrive in Syracuse this week. Feet and feet of snow. If you're not familiar with Lake Effect, Google it. I'm Chris Perrine, KB2FAF.
And reporting from our news bureau just outside Rochester, New York, along the southern shore of Lake Ontario, this is George, Kilo Charlie 2, Oscar X-Ray Juliet.
Coming to you from a rather nippy but still sunny Space Coast in Florida, I'm Ed Johnsen, W2PH.
And reporting from our amateur radio outpost in the Catskill Mountains of upstate New York, where we're scheduled to have a brief but pleasant January thaw this week. I'm Don Hulick, K2ATJ.
And reporting from our news bureau in Sandwich, Illinois, where it appears we've successfully completed our first week of 2026, I'm Jordan Kurtz, Kilo Echo 9, Bravo, Papa Oscar.
And reporting from our news bureau in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where the question of the day is, where's winter? I'm Will Rogers, K5WLR, patiently waiting, knowing winter is just around the corner, isn't it?
Leading off our news this week, Chairman Brendan Carr said the FCC will act this month to enhance unlicensed use in the 6 GHz band. The FCC will vote to create a new category of unlicensed devices called GVP, or Geofenced Variable Power Devices, that can operate outdoors and at higher power than previously authorized devices, according to the announcement from his office headlined President Trump Unleashes American Innovation with a 6 GHz Win. The announcement said the action promises more jaw-dropping innovations and massive consumer benefits for years to come, driving growth in wireless, Internet of Things, and related industries. The proposal has been pushed by tech companies Apple, Broadcom, Google, Intel, Meta, Microsoft, and Qualcomm. In 2024, the Consumer Technology Association told the FCC it supported the idea. Carr said in the announcement that consumers will benefit from better, faster, and more affordable wireless services. He said the plan enables consumers to benefit from supercharged Wi-Fi and a new generation of wireless and innovative smart devices. The Commission provided this explanation of the technology. Geofenced variable power devices promise to overcome technical and regulatory constraints of other low-power devices, such as low-power indoor and very low-power devices. GVP devices offer data rates suitable for reality and virtual reality, short-range hotspots, automation processes, and indoor location and navigation because they operate at significantly higher power than very low-power devices. These benefits will be made possible by restricting GVP devices from operating in exclusion zones on certain frequencies to protect incumbent licensed services from any significant risk of harmful interference. In addition to the pending order to create a new category of GVP devices, the FCC said it will seek comment on proposals that could provide more utility for unlicensed devices in the 6 GHz band.
The Federal Communications Commission made a subtle change last month that requires experimental high-frequency stations to follow its station identification rules. Now, previously, some HF experimental licenses were able to transmit without identifying by utilizing waivers. The licensees, which cover experimental operation in the 2 through 25 MHz band, are available on a temporary but renewable basis. Experimental HF stations are known to run as much as 800 kilowatts of power, but until December, some licenses held waivers allowing them to operate without identifiers. However, in letters issued to licensees on December 17th, the Commission emphasized their obligations. These now include strict adherences to the identification rules. The Commission explained that an experimental radio station must transmit its assigned call sign at the end of each complete transmission, or at least once every 30 minutes in clear voice or Morse code, with all digital encoding and digital modulation disabled during station identification. The FCC's Office of Engineering and Technology said the letters were in response to interference complaints from incumbent spectrum users. Several amateur radio bands, for example, operate in and around where experimental stations are licensed. One experimental station, Whiskey Kilo 2 X-Ray Juliet Kilo, is operated by Rockland Wireless, and it has its antenna on the Armstrong Tower in Alpine, New Jersey. It is authorized to operate with 16 kilowatts ERP, including through the 14.0 through 14.88 megahertz band. As Cobb noted, WK2XJK was exempted from identification as of December 1st. However, by December 17th, that exemption had been removed. Cobb went on to say that not all experimental stations had been exempted from radio station IDs. It remains unknown why some held waivers while others did not. Cobb speculated that it may have simply been a matter of whether or not the license requested an exemption at all. These licenses have drawn significant interest from the HF trading industry for sending data between the U.S. and foreign exchanges. While experimental HF stations can operate under Part 5 of FCC rules, the Commission states that licenses are not permitted to provide commercial service, charge fees, or receive payments for products or services operation. Experimental license records are normally public, but applications can petition to withhold commercially sensitive data. Cobb also reported that the Commission rejected requests from Skywave Networks to reveal confidential information in license applications through the Freedom of Information Act.
In 2026, ARRL is commemorating America's 250th birthday with a year-long on-the-air celebration. John Ross, KD8IDJ, joins us now with all the details on the special event.
The America 250 Worked All States WAS Award. Running from January 1st through December 31st, this special operating event challenges amateurs of all license classes to contact all 50 U.S. states and confirm those QSOs via ARRL's Logbook of the World. Modeled after the classic WAS Award, America 250 WAS encourages activity across nearly every band, from LF through microwaves and on CW, phone, and digital, accumulating in a commemorative, frame-worthy WAS certificate. Participants can pursue America 250 WAS in many ways, with endorsements recognizing achievements by band, by mode, triple play, all three modes, by satellite, and by contacting ARRL-affiliated club stations in all 50 states, and by contacting W1AW Portable in all 50 states. Throughout 2026, the iconic W1AW call sign will be loaned to stations nationwide, activating each state twice during the year. All confirmations are handled through the Logbook of the World, making it easy to track progress and apply for awards and endorsements. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
ARRL members can read all the details in the January-February 2026 issue of On the Air magazine.
As we turn the calendar to a new year, ARRL is launching a year-long celebration that puts the spotlight squarely where it belongs, on radio clubs. John Ross, KD8IDJ, files this report from League headquarters.
Beginning January 1st, 2026, ARRL officially recognizes the Year of the Club, an initiative designated by the ARRL Board of Directors to honor the vital role clubs play in sustaining, growing, and energizing amateur radio. Radio clubs are the backbone of ARRL and of the amateur radio service itself. For countless hams, a club is the first welcoming doorway into a hobby, a place to learn, to operate, to build, and to belong. Clubs create opportunities for mentoring, public service, technical exploration, and lifelong friendships. Simply put, when clubs thrive, amateur radio thrives. Throughout 2026, all ARRL-affiliated clubs are invited to participate in special programs, operating events, and recognition opportunities designed to celebrate club accomplishments and inspire new ideas. ARRL will be rolling out initiatives focused on supporting club growth, strengthening activities, and recognizing clubs that help expand ARRL membership or reach significant milestones, including 100 years of ARRL affiliation. There are new ways to celebrate and compete. 2 exciting contests are already underway to kick off the Year of the Club, highlighting how clubs connect with members and the broader community. Details for entering the ARRL Club Newsletter Contest and the ARRL Club Website Contest are available now, with a shared submission deadline of January 30th, 2026 at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. The ARRL Club Newsletter Contest recognizes that newsletters are often the heartbeat of a club, sharing news and keeping members connected and involved. Does your radio club have a great website that supports club members but also attracts attention for your club? Well, then consider entering the ARRL Club Website Contest. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
Club websites play an increasingly important role in outreach, public service visibility, and attracting new members to amateur radio. Winners will be notified in May 2026, honored at the ARRL National Convention being hosted by the Huntsville Hamfest in August, and featured in QST. With more on this story, we go to our own Mike Nicolich, K9DXM.
In preparation for the Year of the Club, ARRL has launched a new club's website offering a modernized, accessible hub for affiliated clubs, prospective clubs, and individual hams looking to get involved with the club. For more details, we go back to League headquarters, where John Ross, KD8IDJ, files this additional report.
That site brings together information about club benefits, locations, resources, and ARRL affiliation all in one place. The message for 2026 is clear. Celebrate what your radio club already does well. Try something new and be radioactive. Whether your club is small or large, new or nearing a century as an ARRL affiliated club, the Year of the Club is an invitation to connect, innovate, and share your story. Follow all of the club programming for the year at clubs.arrl.org, Year of the Club, and make a 2026 year to remember for your club, for ARRL, and for amateur radio. Read more about it at arrl.org. I'm John Ross, KD8I-DJ.
A standout new feature is the Club Map search tool, which lets users locate radio clubs by zip code and displays both an interactive map and list of nearby clubs. Try it at clubs.arrl.org/map. A new streamlined online application also simplifies the process for becoming a new ARRL affiliated club, and all clubs can use the new member verification tool as they set a club goal to increase ARRL membership among club members. The result is faster service, easier updates, and better support for the affiliated clubs. Everyone is encouraged to explore the new site and pages at clubs.arrl.org and affiliatedclubs.arrl.org. During 2026, every issue of QST will include club photos showcasing the people behind amateur radio's local success stories. Clubs are encouraged to gather members for photos, wear club or ARRL apparel, pose with banners or signs, and submit high-resolution photos along with names, call signs, and club information. It's a simple way to highlight your club's pride and presence on the national stage. See the photo submission guidelines at www.arrl.org/club-photos. In his editorial in the January 2026 issue of QST, ARRL Chief Executive Officer David Minster, NA2AA, noted that clubs have shaped his amateur radio journey from school clubs and field days to lifelong friendships built through shared activities. During the Year of the Club, he encourages members to recognize and thank volunteer leaders who make these experiences possible, while also looking ahead to new opportunities. ARRL will promote innovative ideas and best practices throughout the year, including content inspired by the Marconi program, motivating amateur radio clubs to open new initiatives. Clubs are also encouraged to explore creative projects from kit building nights and technical workshops to hilltopping, antenna expeditions, and new operating challenges. The Year of the Club also coincides with our nation's commemoration and celebration of the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. ARRL will mark the semi-quincentennial with special America 250 Worked All States Awards, including WAS and WAS Triple Play, and clubs will have the opportunity to participate through W1AW portable activations across the country, echoing the excitement of ARRL's centennial in 2014. The first state activations begin January 7th.
With the old year ended and a new year starting up, it might seem to some of us that time is out of sorts. Well, it actually was out of sorts in the United States, specifically in Boulder, Colorado, home of the F4 atomic clock that delivers the official time with precision right down to the microseconds. It seems that a storm-related power cut by the electric utility serving the Boulder campus of the National Institute of Standards and Technology caused a drift in time of 4 millionths of a second in the official timekeeper, the F4 atomic clock. Those moments are immeasurable and of little importance to most of us, except for those who rely on precision in data centers, global positioning systems, aerospace, telecommunications, and the Network Time Protocol Service, the time resource for computer systems. In the wake of the storm, Jeff Sherman, the physicist who maintains the atomic clocks, reported in a mailing list post on Google Groups that the atomic ensemble timescale at our Boulder campus has failed due to a prolonged utility power outage. By some reports then, in late December, time literally stood still, however briefly, until the switch was made to a backup generator. That cost the F4 atomic clock its accuracy. Anticipating the storm with winds of hurricane strength, the National Institute of Standards and Technology had previously advised users to connect to redundant systems at other campuses, such as WWW Fort Collins, Colorado, or Gaithersburg, Maryland, which would remain unaffected. As for the F4 atomic clock in Boulder, the time discrepancy was resolved with the clock's recalibration after power was back on by Sunday, December 21st. It was, of course, just a matter of time. Also a matter of time is just how long the Leaning Tower of Goodland will remain standing. This longtime AM station in northwest Kansas is off the air after wind gusts exceeding 80 miles per hour left its tower leaning. Licensed to Goodland, KLOEAM broadcasts on 730 kilohertz with a 1 kilowatt daytime and just a meager 20 watts at night. It transmitted from a single tower. According to owner Kyle Bauer, 2 of the 4 insulators supporting the tower broke during high winds that swept through Kansas late on the afternoon of December 18th. A third insulator broke days later.
Nominations are now open for the 3 Heritage CQ Magazine Halls of Fame, each now administered by a different person or organization. The Heritage CQ Amateur Radio Hall of Fame honors individuals who have made significant contributions to the amateur radio hobby. More information is available on the hamgallery.com website. Nominations should be sent by February 28 to Tom Roscoe, K8CX, at k8cx@hamgallery.com. The subject line should include CQ Amateur Radio Hall of Fame. The CQ Contest Hall of Fame, administered by the Worldwide Radio Operators Foundation, recognizes amateurs who have made major contributions to the art of radio competition. Details are available on the WWROF website. The nomination deadlines are March 1. Nominations should be sent to John Doerr, K1AR, at cq1ar@gmail.com. And finally, the CQDX Hall of Fame, administered by Indexa, which is also a March 1 deadline. This recognition honors those who organize major DXpeditions or make other significant contributions to DXing. Nominations should be sent to Bob Schenk, N2OO, at n2oo@comcast.net, with CQDX Hall of Fame in the subject line. Inductees to all 3 Halls of Fame will be announced at the Dayton Hamvention weekend in mid-May.
In Germany, amateurs' use of the 70 megahertz band appears to be in limbo as of January 1st. The annual temporary use permit that had been in place expired on December 31st. The regulators have taken no action to renew it. The novice level, which is the middle license class in Germany, has had temporary permission to use the 6-meter band. The nation's regulator, Bravo NET Zulu Alpha, a federal agency, has not extended these operating privileges for Class Echo license holders. Any amateurs wishing to transmit on 50 megahertz in Germany must hold a Class Alpha license, which is a full license, and it has permanent access to the band since June 2024.
Federal Communications Commission Chairman Brendan Carr is closing out 2025 by touting what he described as a historic year at the agency. Looking ahead, Carr signaled that the Commission's aggressive agenda will continue into 2026. This is just the beginning, he said in a statement. The FCC is firing on all cylinders, and we will build on this momentum to deliver even more wins in 2026. A centerpiece of the chairman's 2025 agenda emphasized accelerating broadband deployment. He highlighted the FCC's effort to streamline the retirement of copper networks, overhaul environmental and historic permitting rules, and update pole attachment regulations. The agency proposed reforms to preempt state and local permitting barriers for towers and other wireless infrastructure, including those impeding the expansion of AI infrastructure. A new inquiry was also launched to address state and local regulations that block fiber, cable, and other wireline builds. On wireless leadership, the FCC advanced 5G and 6G by executing on a massive spectrum pipeline to deliver 800 megahertz of spectrum by 2034, set out in President Trump's Working Families Tax Cut Act, which also restored the FCC's auction authority. In the near term, the FCC has proposed to auction 180 megahertz of prime mid-band spectrum in the upper C-band by July 2027, and announced the 2026 auction of low-band AWS-3 spectrum covering 200 markets. Advancing satellites, the FCC enabled more robust direct-to-cell service by allowing satellite providers to operate on spectrum at higher power levels. The agency freed up more than 20,000 megahertz for satellites and proposed new technical rules to boost LEO satellite capacities by up to 180%. The FCC's Delete initiative targeted more than 1,100 rules and regulations, cutting 134,928 words and 312 pages from the Code of Federal Regulations. A total of over 2,000 initiative proceedings were terminated across wireline, wireless, and broadcast sectors. Part 95 changes for CB, GMRS, FRS, and the multi-use radio service included removing information about fines and penalties because the overarching United States Code already details sanctions the FCC can take against errant radio operators. The transmission of false distress signals and station identification also were removed because the United States Code already addresses these issues too. Other actions include removing Roger beeps from being allowed on CB channels, removing GMRS antenna heights because other FCC and aviation rules cover it, not requiring paper licenses for amateur radio operators because they are now downloaded online, and some updates on the regions that volunteer examiner coordinators can serve in giving online license exams. It is expected that other rule cleanups will come in 2026 as the FCC continues to streamline regulations. Since we reported on these moves, the FCC report and order was published in the Federal Registry. Unless valid objections are raised before January 2, 2026, the rules will be deleted on February 10, 2026. Carr also highlighted the FCC's move to end diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, as well as the FCC's reversal of an expansion to the E-rate program to fund school bus Wi-Fi and Wi-Fi hotspots.
AMSAT is offering a limited-time promotion for new and renewing members that includes a free digital copy of Getting Started with Amateur Satellites. The promotion is being offered as AMSAT begins the 2026 membership year. Anyone who joins or renews their AMSAT membership during the promotional period will receive a download link for the latest edition of Getting Started with Amateur Satellites in their membership confirmation email. The guide is designed to help radio amateurs understand the fundamentals of satellite operation and serves as a practical reference for both newcomers and operators returning to the hobby. In addition to this limited-time promotion, AMSAT membership includes a subscription to the AMSAT Journal, access to archived issues, discounts on selected items in the AMSAT online store, and opportunities to participate in AMSAT elections, committees, award programs, and other AMSAT activities and programs. Members may also access archived proceedings from past AMSAT Space Symposiums through the AMSAT member portal. Beyond these tangible benefits, AMSAT membership supports the development, launch, and operation of amateur radio satellites, along with education and outreach efforts. Joining AMSAT is not just about individual benefits, it is about being part of the community that builds and operates amateur satellites for radio amateurs worldwide. As AMSAT looks ahead to 2026, the promotion helps launch another year of growth and opportunity for amateur radio in space.
The National Trust in the UK is marking the 125th anniversary of the Lizard Wireless Station, the cliff-top site that helped transform global communications, with a month of special on-the-air activities and public openings throughout January. This historic building, perched above the Atlantic at Britain's most southerly point, first opened on January 1st, 1901, becoming one of the world's earliest commercial wireless telegraphy stations and enabling ships up to 80 miles away to communicate with land for the first time. Just weeks later, on January 23, 1901, the station achieved a groundbreaking feat, receiving a wireless signal sent from St. Catherine's Point on the Isle of Wight, conclusive proof that radio waves could follow the curvature of the Earth. The breakthrough paved the way for Guglielmo Marconi's landmark transatlantic communication from pole to, later that same year, establishing the foundations of long-distance radio communication. Today, the site remains a living piece of radio history. Cared for by the National Trust and run by dedicated volunteers, The station still operates as an amateur radio hub, connecting visitors and radio enthusiasts with the very landscape where pioneering experiments once took place.
Welcome to the 49th segment of Ham Radio History, a century of amateur radio. Ham's Organization's Events Inventions. I'm Will Rogers, K5WLR. Our thanks go out to Chris Cadella, W2PA, for allowing us to use his website as we prepare these segments. Now come along with us as we bring forth this next chapter of Ham Radio History. Call and Card. This is part 2 of this segment. From the earliest days, hams used postcards to send reception reports to fellow amateurs. Two-way contacts were not always possible, and this was one way to let station operators know their transmitters were being heard. The reverse case also happened. An operator who saw his station's call sign listed in the Calls Heard section of QST would send a card to the listed receiving station inquiring about its receiving setup. In both cases, a reply was expected but not nearly often enough sent. Unanswered QSLs was a frequent complaint even back then. The practice of sending reports by postcard dates back to at least as early as 1916, when first mentioned by Edward Andrews, 3TQ, in a letter to QST. Andrews wrote how very valuable a reception report by postcard really was, and commented that he had never seen it mentioned in QST. In agreement, the editor suggested this was a great way to keep amateurs in touch with each other and better understand the range of their signals. Carl D. Don Hoffman, 8UX, had been drawing cartoons for QST since the 4th issue when he signed 8ADU, his pre-war call. In between, Hoffman served in the Military Intelligence Service radio division. He had set out to be a cartoonist and attended an art school for a while before quitting to open a radio store, then sold it to work for the Republic Electric Company. He was also the editor of a radio column in the Akron, Ohio newspaper. Hoffman wrote a letter published in the August 1919 issue of QST that mentioned using postcards to let the other fellow know you heard his signals. Despite the 1916 letter from 3TQ, QST credited Hoffman with originating the postcard QSL idea. He had also suggested what information a report form should contain. Hoffman had been sending such cards before the war, perhaps that's really why he got the credit, not his 1919 letter, and received many thanks from hams whose stations he heard. As inventor of the QSL card, although it was not yet called that, this letter was the beginning of the idea that has, by early 1924, developed to the point where every amateur station has its walls filled with these printed postcards, wrote the editor. The attribution stuck, and in September, Howard S. Pyle, 8ST, wrote about standards for amateur DX report cards, which he called the international fad that 8UX started. Pyle argued that the only basic pieces of information that really should appear on cards were the call sign and address of the sender, the time and date of the received transmission or QSO, and possibly also the wavelength. Furthermore, he asserted that information about antennas and equipment was superfluous, and besides, it was better to leave blanks for such things since they changed so frequently. Clearly a minimalist, fancy design was something Pyle just could not fathom or tolerate. He criticized the use of pale colors, pointing out that they do not photograph well in black and white printed magazines, and using lots of colors and flourishes was best left to those with some actual artistic talent, lest you make yourself and your station ridiculous to the fraternity. Besides, single-color cards were less costly, too. Lastly, he criticized near-funny cards, writing that there are actual born humorists in the world, but judging from the cards that he had seen, there are surprisingly few in the amateur fraternity, while the efforts of the would-bes are rather disgusting. Avoid cheapening your card by a display of vaudeville humor, whereas cheapening in appearance by using all one color was apparently fine. Bah, humbug, he didn't add. Included in this material are quotes from the following: E.A. Andrews, QSL, Radio Communications by the Amateurs, QST, June 1916, page 142. Who's Who in Amateur Wireless, QST, February 1924, page 57. From QST's cartoonist 880U, Radio Communications by the Amateurs, QST, August 1919, page 29. H.S. Pyle, the Amateur DX Report Card, QST, September 1924, page 36. With a tip of the TWIAR cap to Chris Cadella, W2PA, for the use of his website, Ham Radio History, A Century of Amateur Radio, Ham's Organizations, Events, Inventions, I'm Will Rogers, K5WLR, reporting for This Week in Amateur Radio.
Foundations of Amateur Radio. When you start the process of getting your hobby off the ground, either for the first time or after a hiatus, you might be left with the impression that the only way to do amateur radio is to have a shack, a place where you can set up your gear and connect it to that gear using coax, one or more antennas. While that's a common scenario, it's not the only one at your disposal. We are, after all, in the game of communication, and over the past few decades, options have exploded. Starting closest to the traditional radio coax and antenna is to consider indoor antennas. There's many to choose from. You can install one in the same room as your shack, or you can build your antennas in the roof space. Either way, invisible from the outside can sometimes be a requirement. Stealth is a topic all its own, and no doubt we'll get to that another time. A word of caution: if you do have an indoor antenna and associated coax, consider your transmitter power levels, since it's likely that, given the close proximity, you'll exceed emissions safety standards, or you'll cause harm to other electronic equipment in the building. QRP, or low power, is a good way to go if this is something you're considering. If we step away from a traditional radio coax antenna configuration, you can build your shack in other ways too. For example, you can use a local repeater, which you might trigger from a local handheld radio. Often dismissed as being for local communications only, there are thousands of repeaters across the globe offering a variety of bands, frequencies and modes. Often you can access a local repeater that can be connected to a remote one using a bewildering array of technologies, some using the internet, some using traditional RF. You'll find repeaters on 10 meters, 6 meters, 2 meters, 70 centimeters and 23 centimeters. There's nothing stopping you making your own repeater. You don't even need to go through the effort of making it completely standalone. For example, my Yaesu FT857D has a detachable faceplate, or head, connected to the main body by a short cable. There are plenty of other radios with a similar configuration. Presumably designed for the installation in a vehicle, where the head needs to be near the driver and there's unlikely to be space for the body, you can run a longer cable from the head to the body and install it somewhere more convenient. In my case, it was bolted underneath the removable floor into the boot next to the spare tyre. There's several solutions that replace the connecting cable with an internet connection. Now, that internet connection can be across the room, from inside your shack to your garage, or between your shack and a remote hill where you have permission to put up a bit of gear. In fact, the same type of setup can be used to connect to shared radios, and companies like Elecraft, Flex Radio and ICOM make specific remote heads that can operate remote radio equipment marketed as RF decks, without needing to install and maintain computers at either end. But more often than not, this equipment is brand or model specific, which raises another option. You can connect to remote equipment across the internet using your computer, which means that your shack might be a computer, a laptop or a mobile phone, and your gear might be in a different country. Many radio clubs have discovered that their often extensive radio shack is virtually unused during the week, and have installed remote equipment to allow you as a member to connect, sometimes as part of your membership, sometimes with an extra fee, since there are costs associated with setting this up and keeping it running. At some point, you're going to discuss this with other amateurs, and you're potentially going to hear someone tell you that this is not real radio. Considering over a century of radio evolution, from spark gap through valves, transistors, integrated circuits, and software-defined radio, where exactly is the real radio line drawn? is using Whisper, RTTY, FT8, Hellschreiber, Olivia, SSTV, PSK31, Domino, MFSK, and thousands of other digital modes real radio? If the answer to that is an emphatic yes, then ask yourself, how do you actually use those modes? The answer looks suspiciously like a computer running digital mode software, either connected to a physical radio in the same room or connected to one across the internet. In other words, with the proliferation of communication alternatives, amateur radio is evolving. No doubt it will evolve further. So today, a perfectly viable and some might say modern amateur radio shack might not actually have any traditional RF-based radio gear, though perhaps a handheld might be something to consider when you next treat yourself. Not because without it you're not a real amateur, but because it opens your world to other means of communication, something which I think is perhaps even more important than building the perfect shack. In other words, you are not required to have a shack to be a radio amateur. It's just that it brings with it another dimension of engagement and activity. Speaking from personal experience, I miss my functional shack, but it's evolving, so there's that. Next time I'll take a look at antennas, stealthy or otherwise. I'm Ono, Victor Kilo 6, Foxtrot Lima, Alpha Bravo.
The import and sale of foreign-made drones and components are now banned in the U.S. following action by the Federal Communications Commission, citing the potential of national security risks. The agency's move follows an executive order from the White House in June banning unmanned aircraft systems and their parts. The executive order, known as Restoring American Airspace Sovereignty, stated that the move also has the goal of boosting drone manufacturing in the U.S. for use here and for export to the global marketplace. As FCC Chairman Brendan Carr said on X, criminals, terrorists, and hostile foreign actors have intensified their weaponization of these technologies, creating new and serious threats to our homeland. It is certainly true that drones are redefining the shape of modern conflict. But the question here is, if foreign drones get banned, why wouldn't all these bad guys just buy American drones instead? It's not clear how the prohibition solves the purported problem. To be clear, this ban only affects any future drone models designed outside the U.S. In other words, anything you can buy right now will continue to be on sale. It's just that any newer models will not be certified, so going forward, only old foreign drones and new domestic ones will be available. Take that, terrorists! However, the military and Homeland Security Services can still request waivers for specific models they want, and given that many first responders use drones these days, it wouldn't be surprising if they get waivers too. But part of the reason those American companies struggle is because they are fighting the established dominance of foreign drones, specifically from China and even more specifically from DJI. This one company commands upwards of 70% of the entire world's drone market. Its products are cheap, reliable, and capable. However, in this world of trade wars and Taiwanese tensions, relying so heavily on a Chinese company is a potential risk. Besides, they might not be secure. The Army banned DJI drones in 2017 for cybersecurity reasons, and they might even be sending all their information back to the Chinese government, per CNN. So the Trump administration appears to have just taken a hammer to the whole situation. Bad drones go away. The problem, of course, is that leaves everyone who uses them in the lurch. Drones are a huge market, estimated to be about $6 billion in the U.S. As an example, drones have become critical to agriculture in a way that cannot be cheaply replaced. The good news is that everyone can still buy the same old models they have been. The bad news is they'll never get all the cool new stuff that the rest of the world will get. To catch up, America will need to build competitive capabilities at a competitive price.
As of January 1, the landscape for drone operators has also changed in the UK under new Civil Aviation Authority regulation. Each drone to be sold must carry class marks that reflect compliance with that particular aircraft's technical and safety standard. The class marks are similar to those used in the European Union and cover where and how the drone can be flown. There's also an array of new regulations covering different weights of drones and their permitted proximity to people or crowds of people. Drones carrying cameras and weighing at least 100 grams are also required to have a flyer ID. A remote ID is also required to transmit the drone's ID and its location while airborne. The new regulations apply to drone use by hobbyists as well as professional. The class-based regulations do not apply to drones purchased before the 1st of this year. They will instead operate under a weight-based rule. For specific rules, visit caa.co.uk/drones.
There is now an easier way for ham radio experimenters to secure a static IP address specifically designed for amateur radio use. With more details, we go to John Ross, KD8IDJ, with this report.
ARDC, the Amateur Radio Digital Communications Organization, has introduced 44Net Connect, which it describes as a service that makes it easy for hams to begin using 44Net IPv4 addresses through a simple, modern setup. ARDC is best known as a foundation making grants to help fund amateur radio and/or digital communications technology. But this original mission was, and still is, to administer Internet Network 44, also known as 44Net or AMPRNet. This is a group of Internet addresses from 44.0.0.0/9 to 44.128.0.0/10, and it was set aside for amateur radio use when the Internet was first being organized back in the 1980s. According to ARDC, 44Net Connect uses modern, secure WireGuard networking that's already supported by many popular routers, including Netgear and TP-Link, and it works across a wide range of devices from desktop computers and phones to tiny Raspberry Pis. All in all, says ARDC, 44Net Connect makes 44Net more accessible and fun, helping more people experiment with networking amateur radio and digital communications technologies. More information and instructions for accessing the system are available on the ARDC website's 44Net Connect page. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
The group explains that whether you're experimenting with digital modes, improving repeater infrastructure, setting up a home lab, or just curious to see what 44Net is all about, this new service lowers the barrier of entry to get you started. The group says 44Net Connect offers 4 especially useful features: simple setup, a static IPv4 internet access that doesn't rely on your commercial internet service provider, bypassing carrier-level network address translation limitations, and a safe space to learn and experiment with networking technology without fear of breaking the internet.
There are 4 new section managers taking on the top volunteer leadership role in the ARRL field organization on January 1st, 2026. Brett Steeman, KD8SCL, has been appointed as the Ohio section manager to finish the term that will end September 30th, 2026. Steeman of Pataskala has recently served as the section emergency coordinator. He has taken the reins from Tom Sly, WB8LCD, who has decided to step down following his tenure as Ohio section manager since 2021. Mike Corey, KI1U, has been appointed to be the ARRL Rhode Island section manager, completing the term that will end June 30th, 2027. Corey of Coventry has been serving as the assistant section manager and public information coordinator. Rhode Island section manager Nancy Austin, KC1NEK, is stepping down early following her service in the position since 2023. Ralph Katz, AA8RK, will become the ARRL section manager of Michigan with a term ending June 30th, 2028. Katz of Ann Arbor was the only nominee for the position during the most recent election cycle. He succeeds Larry Camp, WB8R, who has served as the Michigan section manager since 2023 and from 2012 through 2017. Keith Elliott, W6KME of Newbury Park, California, will be the Santa Barbara section manager through June 30th, 2028. He was the sole nominee during the most recent election cycle. Elliott takes on the role of section manager after John Kitchens, NS6X, completes his term of office as section manager. Kitchens has served as section manager since 2018 and was elected to the ARRL Board of Directors last month to become the Vice Director of the Southwestern Division starting January 1st. The ARRL field organization is divided into 71 sections and is comprised of more than 60,000 volunteers among ARRL's membership.
The New Zealand Association of Radio Transmitters was created for the country's ham radio operators 100 years ago in Auckland on August 16th. Not looking to miss out on a full-scale celebration this year, hams have already begun marking the occasion with modified call signs. So how do you show pride in the group that has come to represent and advocate for amateur radio in New Zealand? One way is to drop the ZL prefix and swap it out with the ZM during the centenary year of 2026. So be listening. The ZM prefix is a recognized special event call sign in New Zealand and has been used before. This occasion is a far happier one than the previous authorizations of radio spectrum management, which allowed the use of ZM during the period of the COVID-19 lockdown. Don't worry, the ZL prefix isn't going away this year. You'll see. Be hearing for special event call signs such as ZL100MVL and ZL100AM, which have been approved for use until March 31st, 2026. Here's to the next 100 years for New Zealand's amateurs.
Hello, Happy New Year, and welcome to the DX Corner for your weekly dose of DX. I'm Bill, AJ8B. The following DX information comes from Bernie, W3UR, editor of the Daily DX, the Weekly DX, and the How's DX column in QST. If you would like a free 2-week trial of the Daily DX, your only source of real-time DX information, just drop me a note at thedxmentor@gmail.com. We have some bad news on the expedition that we had announced a couple weeks ago. San Ambrosia Island, Charlie Echo Zero/Zulu, has been canceled. Quote, "This is to inform the DX community that I received today an official response to requests for landing and operating San Ambrosia Island. The relevant authorities communicated to me that they are looking into processing my application for the 2026 fishing season, which runs from September 2026 to March 2027. In view of the above, the radio activity originally scheduled for January and February of this year must be regretfully postponed. I want to convey to the DX community that I remain fully committed to bringing this rare DXCC entity, ranked number 3 of the most wanted list, back on the air. As such, I will continue to pursue this project with professionalism and determination, seeking a successful outcome. Thank you." Well done. Great effort, Philippe Gutierrez, X-Ray Quebec 7, India Romeo. My hat's off to you for even trying, and I got a hunch you'll get there. You're very persistent, so good luck. I also have a 3 Yankee Stroke B Bouvet Island update. The ARRL has awarded the Colvin Grant to the 3Y0 Kilo Bouvet D-Expedition, one of the most expensive ham radio D-Expeditions ever, with a $1.7 million budget, largely allocated to secure a reliable Arctic vessel for the remote island operation. The international team of 24 operators, including 2 young hams, will utilize helicopters to land on the glacier-covered island, prioritizing safety for all personnel. The Colvin Award, established by Lloyd and Iris, W6KG and W6QL Colvin, supports amateur radio projects that foster global goodwill, and additional funding has come from several DX foundations. The February 2026 3 Yankee Zero Kilo Expedition's complete log will be uploaded to ARL's Logbook of the World within a year, aiding operators in pursuing DXCC awards, and the team continues to seek further financial support from the amateur radio community, end quote. Well, good luck to them. That is a major undertaking and a quite dangerous area, so our thoughts and prayers are with them, and I hope to get them in the log. Well, I also have an update on the South Georgia D-Expedition, the VP0SG, which is scheduled for 27. I know it's a little bit off, but heck, if it's January 27, it's basically less than a year. Quote, "Team is now finalized with the addition of Violetta, Kilo November 2 Papa. The VP0SG South Georgia 2027 D-Expedition team, organized by the Amateur Radio D-Expedition Group, ARD, is pleased to announce that the team is now complete by adding Violetta KN2P. Licensed since 2012, Violetta represents the next generation of active DXers, bringing strong operating skills and international experience. She's operated from major contest stations including W3LPL, K3LR, PJ2 Tango, and Juliet 62 Kilo, and has prior D-Expedition experience as part of the Echo 51 Mike Whiskey Alpha D-Expedition. Outside amateur radio, Violetta is a single and multi-engine flight instructor, contributing strong operational awareness and safety-oriented experience to the team. With this addition, the Victor Papa Zero Sugar Golf team is now finalized, and preparations continue toward the planned March 2027 activation of South Georgia, subject to final permitting. And good luck to them. That's another very difficult place to operate from, and I'm sure they'll pull it off. Finally, we have an update on the Tokelau Islands DXpedition. Quote, since its formation in 2013, the Perseverance DX Group, the PDXG, has conducted 6 DXpeditions, logging over 460,000 QSOs. From being chased off of Mellish Reef by a cyclone to living on an Antarctic island for 2 weeks and crossing the reef at Clipperton Island, PDXG continues to plan projects that create fun and excitement on the bands for all amateur radio enthusiasts. After their successful 2024 TX5S Clipperton Island DXpedition, the Perseverance DX Group is pleased to announce a joint project with members of the Western Washington DX Club. It is our intent to activate Tokelau Island, which is designated as OC-048, Club Logs number 42 worldwide and number 24 in Europe ranking. It will have been 7 years since the last Tokelau DXpedition. The written permission to enter the island we have in hand. Planning has begun for a DXpedition in November of 2026. A team of experienced DX and contest operators will operate for up to 13 days. 5 operating positions are planned for 160 through 6 meters, utilizing CW, sideband, and digital operations. The team will meet in Apia, Samoa, and take a 30-hour ferry ride to the island. The government of Tokelau is handling all the logistic arrangements, including travel to the island, operating location, sleeping arrangements, and meals. The call sign will be announced later. Throughout the application process, we appreciate the cooperation and assistance from the Council of Elders and other governmental officials, end quote. That's really exciting. I'm sure these guys will pull it off. So there's quite a bit of DX and stuff coming out in the next year or so. So you need to pay attention. So more near term on the calendar, we have the British Virgin Islands, VP2V. Whiskey 5, Gulf India. Jonathan has returned to Anegda Island in the British Virgin Islands in his QRV as Victor Papa 2 Victor stroke Whiskey 5, Gulf India until January 20th. He is hopeful to work 1,000 stations from POTA designation, Victor Golf-0021. Listen for him on sideband and FT8 for both the park and his living QTH. He will be mainly on 20 meters, but can also operate on 40, 17, 15, 12, and 10. From St. Helena Island, which is Zulu Delta 7, we have this. Casey, Alpha Charlie 1 Golf Quebec, will be on St. Helena Island from January 10th to the 24th. He plans to operate with a QRP rig and an end-fed antenna on the 40 and 20 meter bands if possible. Casey will bring a copy of his home amateur radio license and is seeking advice on applying for a ZD7 license. So if someone can help him, contact Alpha Charlie 1 Golf Quebec or me, the dxmentor@gmail.com. Well, this one's right around the corner, and you're going to read about this in all the ham radio press. Quote, in collaboration with the Vieques Island Amateur Radio Club, which is NP3VI, and the Manana DX Foundation, we are proud to announce the KP5 stroke Nancy Papa 3 Victor India DXpedition, a landmark DXpedition to Desiceo Island, which is KP5, currently ranked by Club Log as the 14th most wanted DXCC entity worldwide. Located approximately 13 miles off the west coast of Puerto Rico, Desiceo Island has not been activated since 2009. This operation represents the first Puerto Rican DXpedition to Desiceo in 48 years, following the historic Kilo Papa 4 Alpha Mike stroke Delta activation in 1978. The primary mission of this DXpedition is to provide an all-time new one to as many amateur radio operators worldwide as possible. Operators from Puerto Rico and international locations will participate to maximize coverage, band availability, and global accessibility. To ensure continuous global on-air presence, 2 self-sustained remote deployable units provided by the Manana DX Foundation will be deployed on the island. These stations will operate 24 hours per day for 30 consecutive days, utilizing state-of-the-art remote operating infrastructure from Remote Ham Radio. Operations will be live-streamed, and there will be a real-time activity updates via Club Log. Nancy Papa 4 Golf, Dr. Otis Vincennes is the expedition leader, and Nancy 2 Alpha Juliet, Stephen Haas is media officer and pilot. And kind of stay tuned because the DX Mentor should be having a on-island interview with Otis here in about a week or so. Philippe, Delta Kilo 6 Sugar Papa, and Sven, Delta Juliet 4 Mike X-Ray, have announced the next adventure of the next generation DX Club. Quote, "This time, our young and ambitious team will travel to the People's Republic of Bangladesh, better known as S2 to the amateur radio community. After bringing you 8 Radio 7 X-Ray Guyana in 2024 and Victor 73 Whiskey, the Marshall Islands last year, we are ready to make waves from one of Asia's most exciting and underactivated locations. More information about call signs, dates, and operators will follow." And here, if you've been following me, you know that I need Bangladesh in the worst way. Lima Zulu 0 Alpha, the South Shetland Islands. Lima Zulu 1 Alpha Whiskey, Evo, is on his way to the South Shetland Islands, where he will be working during the 34th Bulgarian Antarctic expedition. If you've been tuning around at all or watching spots, he is already QRV and will be so until February 16th, plus or minus 2 days. Ivo expects to be on 20 meters and possibly other bands on sideband FT8 and FT4. From Cambodia, which is X-Ray United, Delta Lima 7 Bravo Oscar. Tom, who is QRV until January 18th, is using now the call sign X-Ray Uniform 7 Oscar. He will be active on 160 through 6 meters using CW sideband and FT8 with a focus on the lower bands. QSL information remains direct to Delta Juliet 4 Whiskey Kilo or via LOTW, Club Log, or EQSL. Peter, Fox 4 Golf Papa Kilo, is QRV as Tango Oscar 2 Fox Yankee until January 15th from French Guiana, which is Fox Yankee. From Africa, we get the Gambia, Charlie 5 Yankee Kilo. Andre, Oscar November 7 Yankee Kilo, is QRV from the Gambia as Charlie 5 Yankee Kilo until January 25th. He is operating on sideband, RIDI, PSK, FT8, FT4, and some CW on 20, 17, 15, 12, and 10 meters. And you can QSL only via LOTW or EQSL or direct to Oscar November 7 Yankee Kilo. He does post his logbook on his website. Michael, whose call sign is Oscar X-Ray 3 Mike Charlie, from Greenland, operates out of the Space Base in northwestern Greenland. His upcoming assignment runs until February 25th, 2026. Michael is most active on weekends starting around 0400 Zulu and sometimes works radio in the evenings after 2100 Zulu. Michael works HF single sideband 160 through 10 meters and QSL via the Danish Oscar Zulu Bureau. From Kenya, we have 5 Zulu. Not an expedition, but on the air casually, quote, holiday style, will be Oscar Zulu 6 Alpha Bravo Lima stroke 5Z4. Michael Johansen, and he'll be there, QRV, from January 15th to the 28th. He says he will try to get on the air as much as possible, but it is holiday style. It's his 14th trip to Kenya, but the first time taking a radio along. Michael will be on 80 through 6 meters, but he did not get permission for 60 meters. And you can QSL him as well to Oscar Zulu 6 Alpha Bravo Lima. From X-Ray Tango, which is Burkina Faso, we have the following. Max Delta Kilo 1 Mike Alpha X-Ray is QRV from Burkina Faso until January 11th, operating as X-Ray Tango 2 Mike Alpha X-Ray. He's using an IC 7300 rig with up to 100 watts of power, working mostly on 20 meters to 6 meter bands, possibly lower bands if conditions allow. The modes will be CW sideband and the FTs. QSLs will be handled by Echo Alpha 5 Golf Lima and Club Log. From Kosovo, Zulu 6, we have the following. Hotel Bravo 9, Tango Sugar Whiskey, Gabe is QRV, is Zulu 68, Bravo Golf from Slatina Air Base, Kosovo, until January 28th, using CW only. For direct QSL, send an SAE with 3 green stamps to Hotel Bravo 9, Tango Sugar Whiskey. Benin, Tango Yankee. Tango Yankee 5 Golf is Gerard, Fox 5 November Victor Fox, and he's QRV until April 6th. He will upload the club to Club Log and also have some live streaming. QSL via LOTW. Thank you to the 425 DX News for this one. The DX Mentor features a new YouTube episode this coming weekend, a discussion with Dave, KJ9I, about 6 meters, 6 meter EME, and a potential EME expedition. Check it out and let me know what you think. Well, that's quite a bit of information, but there it is. Until next week, this is Bill, age 8B, saying 7-3, and thanks to my XYL Karen for her love and support. I hope to hear you in the pileups. Have a great DX week.
It is the beginning of a brand new month, and that means it is time for this month's Volunteer Monitoring Report. The Volunteer Monitor, or VM program, is a joint venture between the ARRL and the FCC to enhance compliance in the amateur radio service. Technician operators in Connecticut, Washington, Kansas, New York, California, and Arizona were issued advisories concerning 20-meter FT8 operation, a band on which technicians have no privileges. A technician operator in New York was issued an advisory for 17-meter FT8 operation, a band on which technicians also have no privileges. A club station in California was issued an advisory for operation with an expired license. 2 operators in Florida were issued advisories concerning identification of their stations on 40 meters. Section 97.119 Subpart A requires amateur stations to transmit the assigned call sign at the end of each communication and at least every 10 minutes during a communication. An operator in Utah received a notice of violation from the FCC for operation on 173.767 MHz, a frequency not authorized to the amateur service. An operator in Florida received a notice of violation from the FCC for broadcasting, prohibited by Section 97.113 Subpart B of the Commission rules, and for refusal to allow an inspection, in violation of Section 97.103 Subpart C. Both operators were directed to respond to the notices within 30 days with sworn statements under penalty of perjury. Interference to amateur satellite operations was informally resolved through the VM program. Persistent interference to 3.868 MHz was determined to be from a foreign transmitter. There was one virtual club presentation about the volunteer monitoring program given to the Oro Valley Amateur Radio Club in Tucson, Arizona. The FCC requested assistance in 2 cases, a public safety case near McAllen, Texas, and a case involving unlicensed operation in California. The totals for this report's monitoring were 1,235 hours on HF frequencies and 2,003 hours on VHF frequencies and above, for a total of 3,238 monitoring hours. We thank Volunteer Monitor Program Administrator Riley Hollingsworth, K4ZDH, for this month's report.
One of the top stories we covered in 2025 was a proposal to add VHF low frequencies in the 30 through 50 megahertz range for use by family radio service users and general mobile radio service licensee. The proposal asks that the Federal Communications Commission reallocate underused frequencies to allow FRS and GMRS growth on frequencies that would offer farther range in some areas. National Capital Communications LLC, also known as Mid-Atlantic REACT in Washington, formally requested the FCC reallocate a series of outdated and abandoned frequencies to enhance GMRS and FRS capability. The petition was submitted by Michael C. Trajos, KAB7046, a longtime GMRS licensee who is a physician. He is also a general class ham with a call sign of KB4PGC and has other FCC licenses too. The petition was filed in response to FCC rulemaking efforts and aligned with President Trump's executive orders promoting deregulation and efficient government operations. The request highlighted a growing need for longer-range, publicly accessible communications tools in the face of increasingly severe natural disaster. Frequencies being sought in the proposal included old cordless phone channels at 46 and 49 megahertz, low-power baby monitor and walkie-talkie channels from 49.83 through 49.89 megahertz, and abandoned VHF low-paging frequencies at 35 and 43 megahertz. The latter assignment is being sought for 7 repeater channels with 300 watts of maximum power. The petitioner also asks the FCC to proceed forward with the petition and issue a rulemaking number to adjust the proposed reallocation of frequencies because it's in the public interest. No action has been taken so far, however. Communications channels remain open between the petitioner and the agency.
Bruce Page, KK5DO, is here now with this week's AMSAT report. Bruce?
Thanks, John. We hope you had a wonderful holiday season. A few weeks back, we spoke about the AMSAT CubeSat SIM kit, and it was of great interest to many. I'm pleased to announce that they are now available and that when they sell out, back orders will be allowed. The parts will now start to become available more readily, and it should be easier to order one. Visit AMSAT online store at amsat.org. In following through with AMSAT's youth initiative, we have worked with Eric N2XCE to create the first of many youth courses. Eric, having been a science teacher in New Jersey and a graduate of Montclair State University with an MS in geosciences, makes him a perfect fit for this task. He has created our first course, An Introduction to Satellite Meteorology. The second course, Satellites and Climate Change, is also available. These courses are free of charge at Buzz, that's BUZZSAT.com. The next course, which will be available shortly, is Satellites and Pollution Control. Future course development will be for courses on wildlife and natural resources, navigation, satellite design and operation, space exploration, communications, broadcasting, military operations, and much, much more. BuzzSat.com is AMSAT's website for kids. This is Bruce Page, KK5DO. Back to you, John.
And thanks, Bruce, for that report.
It is time for our weekly look at solar weather and the terrestrial propagation forecast. Geomagnetic field activity is likely to reach G1 or minor geomagnetic storm levels on January 13th and 14th, and then again from January 17th through the 20th. Unsettled levels are likely on January 12th and then again from January 21st through the 22nd. All enhancements in geomagnetic activity are due to the anticipated influence of multiple recurrent coronal holes. The remainder of the outlook period is expected to be mostly quiet. A tracking model from the NOAA and SWPC shows a coronal mass ejection could pass close to Earth by January 11th. Multiple faint coronal mass ejections were observed off the southeast limb originating from region 4334. However, modeling appeared to show no Earth-directed component. Solar activity is expected to be low, with a 45% chance for minor to moderate M-class flares and a slight 10% chance for isolated X-class strong flares until January 10th. Solar wind parameters became mildly enhanced after January 7th. However, coronal hole high-speed stream influence is expected to persist through January 10th. Unsettled to active conditions are expected to continue on January 10th and 11th as the coronal hole moves further into a geomagnetic position, along with the possible arrival of coronal mass ejections that left the Sun back on January 8th, with a chance for isolated minor storm conditions late on January 10th. According to the original forecast, solar activity was expected to gradually decline until mid-January. However, an active region, AR 4336, emerged in the southeast of the solar disk in a location where nothing unusual had occurred during the previous solar rotation. As a result, overall solar activity is already beginning to increase. Note that the forecast for the coming days is very uncertain. If the situation from the last solar rotation repeats itself, solar activity could continue to increase through mid-January, while the days of January 15th through the 18th could be geomagnetically active or even disturbed. However, it seems that a reliable forecast cannot be made right at this time. For more information concerning radio propagation, visit the ARRL Technical Information Service, read a quick guide to HF propagation using solar indices, and check out the propagation page of Carl Luetzelswab, K9LA. For customizable propagation charts, visit the VOA-CAP online for Ham Radio website.
This weekend kicks off 3 great weekends of amateur radio contests. The North American QSO Party, CWNAQP, runs from 1800 UTC, January 10th through 0559 UTC, January 11th, 2026, and is a favorite of both newly licensed amateurs and seasoned operators. The NAQP contests are for lower power only, no amplifiers allowed, which makes for a lot more breathing room on the bands. Multipliers count once per band, which makes for an exciting format, as multipliers may be moved from band to band. The NAQPs allow stations from all parts of North America to be in the running for the top spots. If you prefer single sideband SSB, that portion of the contest runs next weekend from 1800 UTC January 17th to 0559 UTC on January 18th, 2026. Also next weekend, the North American Collegiate Championship single sideband runs at the same time, 1800 UTC January 17th to 0559 UTC January 18th. Winter Field Day 2026, WFD is up next, scheduled to run from 1600 UTC, that's 11 a.m. Saturday, January 24th, through 2159 UTC, 4:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, January 25th. Stations may begin setting up at 1600 UTC on Friday, January 23rd. However, cumulative setup time may not exceed 12 hours. You can review the complete rules, including this year's changes, at rules.wfda. And also remember to mark your calendar for the 2026 ARRL Field Day. That's on June 27th and 28th. Just ahead in Radio Sport, January 10th, it's the YBDX contest. That is phone. Also on January 10th, the Old New Year contest, CW phone. The UBA PSK 63 prefix contest, that's digital. January 10th and the 11th, the SKCC Weekend Sprintathon, that's CW. Also January 10th through the 11th, the North American QSO Party, that's CW. January 11th, the NRAU Baltic Contest, single sideband phone. January 11th also, the DARC 10-meter contest, that's CW and phone. And January 11th, the NRAU Baltic Contest, that is CW. Remember to visit the ARRL contest calendar for more events and information. Upcoming section and state division conventions, January 10th, it's the Ham Radio University ARRL New York City Long Island Section Convention. That's in Brookville, New York. January 16th to the 17th, the Southwest Florida Regional Ham Fest, ARRL Southern Florida Section Convention in Fort Myers, Florida. And January 30th through the 31st, the Jackson, Mississippi Capital City Ham Fest, ARRL Mississippi State Convention. That's in Jackson, Mississippi. And don't forget to search the ARRL Ham Fest and Convention database to find events in your area.
ARRL has awarded a $5,000 Colvin Award grant to the Delta X-Ray Group, organizers of the upcoming 3Y OK DXpedition to Bouvet Island, scheduled for February and March 2026. Bouvet is a remote island in the Southern Ocean, populated only by seals and penguins, and known for its treacherous weather and surf conditions. It is a territory of Norway, and nearly all of it is covered by glaciers. The most recent amateur radio operation from Bouvet was the 3Y OJ DXpedition in 2023, which moved the island from number 2 on the Club Log Most Wanted list to number 10. 2 camps are planned, according to team leaders, operating all HF bands, with 1 camp focusing on high band propagation to North America when conditions allow. Each camp will consist of 3 tents, serving as operating, sleeping, and communal spaces. These tents have previously been used on Bouvet Island, and team leaders say that they have proven capable of withstanding the extreme conditions expected. Plans call for the team to leave for Bouvet from Cape Town, South Africa on February 1st, weather permitting. 3Y OK plans to use helicopter airlifts to transport personnel and equipment between the vessel and the island. The group expects to spend 3 weeks on and around the island and will attempt to make contact with as many other ham radio operators around the world as they can, using up to 8 stations operating on CW, SSB, FT8, RTTY, and the QO100 geostationary satellites. The 3Y OK DXpedition is perhaps the most expensive ham radio expedition ever mounted, with a budget of $1.7 million, most of which, $1.2 million, is for what the team refers to as a reliable commercial Arctic-Antarctic vessel, noting that safe and reliable ship transportation continues to be a challenge for such remote island expeditions, and the cost continues to rise. Team leaders note that the foremost priority of the 3Y OK expedition is the safety of the operating team, support personnel, and the vessel and helicopter crews. The team consists of 24 operators from 14 countries. 2 of the team members are young hams, 21-year-old Max Friedman, N4ML, and ARRL staff member, and 26-year-old Alex Scheinberg, DL2ALY, an aviation engineer currently working at a German research station in Antarctica. The Colvin Award is funded by an endowment established by the legendary DX couple Lloyd Colvin, W6KG, and Iris Colvin, W6QL, both now deceased. The award is intended to support amateur radio projects that promote international goodwill in the field of DX. Other major financial support for DXpedition have come from Northern California DX Foundation, the International DX Association, and the German DX Foundation. The complete 3Y OK log will be uploaded to the ARRL's Logbook of the World within 12 months following the DXpedition. LOTW is used by radio amateurs to track their progress towards awards, including the ARRL DXCC Award and the DX Century Club Award, which is achieved by confirming on-the-air contacts with 100 geographic entities. We extend our sincere thanks to all equipment sponsors and financial supporters, and, particularly, the ARRL Colvin Award Grant. Without this collective support, activating Bouvet Island and delivering an all-time new one from the number 10 Club Log DXCC Most Wanted entity would not be possible. The team continues to seek financial support from the amateur radio community. For more information, visit 3yok.com.
Richard Dean Straw, N6BV, died on July 9, 2025. Amateur radio was one of his passions. With more on this story, we go to League headquarters, where John Ross, KD8IDJ, files a special report.
Dean retired from the ARRL staff in 2008 following 15 years of service as the Senior Assistant Technical Editor. Mark writes that in 2006, the World Radio Sport Team Championship, WRTC, was held in Florianópolis, Brazil, a coastal city that straddles both Santa Catarina Island and the Brazilian mainland. Not far inland, snow-capped mountains climb into the clouds and miles of glittering sandy beaches ring the city. The climate is subtropical and supports a dizzying diversity of plant and animal life, from swaying palm trees to visiting American tourists. Among those visiting tourists, in this case for the WRTC, as part of the PT5J team, was Dean Straw, N6BV. Dean was born on another island, thousands of miles from Florianópolis in Honolulu, Hawaii, in 1946. He lived there until he came to the mainland to study electrical engineering at Yale University. After graduating, he worked in radio design in Massachusetts at the National Radio Company, as well as in North Carolina, San Francisco, and on Cape Cod. He had a great ability to pull calls out of the noise. His counterpart, PT5J and WRTC, Mark Oberman, AG9A, recalled. He must have had some kind of extra processing gain inside his noggin. While Dean and Mark wouldn't win the contest that year, they did post an impressive score of 1,333,789. After the contest, while vacationing in Brazil, Oberman relayed an antecedent that involved another of Straw's hobbies, competitive running. Dean and Rima were in Rio de Janeiro when a kid stole Dean's 35mm camera. Being a long-distance runner, Dean chased after him for several miles before it occurred to him that catching the kid might be dangerous and possibly getting killed was not worth getting the camera back. Indeed, Dean would live many years beyond that trip to Brazil, passing away from complications of an extended battle with Parkinson's disease. Rima, his wife of 38 years, survive him, as do sons Jeff and Rick. And you can continue reading about this remembrance on ARRL News. I'm John Ross, KD8IDJ.
Not only is Dean remembered among hams for his contesting prowess, but for his tenure in the publications department at ARRL headquarters. He edited 5 editions of the ARRL Antenna Book, the most of any named editor, 4 volumes of the ARRL Antenna Compendium, and several editions of the ARRL Handbook. Former QST editor and ARRL author Steve Ford, WB8IMY, recalls his time with Dean. He became my antenna mentor when I joined the headquarters staff. Until I met Dean, I didn't even know that ladder line existed or about its low-loss characteristics. He helped me incorporate it into my home station and then collaborated with me in writing a popular QST article about my experience. The article was titled The Lure of the Ladder Line and appeared in the December 1993 issue. Reflecting on Straw's contributions to the ARRL Antenna Book, that volume's most recent editor, H. Ward Silver, and Zero AX says, Dean's were very big shoes to fill, Dean started with a small book of antenna fundamentals and basic designs, then brought it into the modern era with much more detail and a wider scope that was groundbreaking. Beyond his expansion and updating of the ARRL antenna book, Straw wrote modeling software that is still distributed with the antenna book, including Yagi for Windows, for which he generated a whole family of HF and VHF designs, according to Silver. He also wrote transmission lines for Windows, which integrated several calculator-style tools into one comprehensive package, and arguably, his software masterpiece was high-frequency terrain analysis, which combined terrain data and antenna patterns so hams could truly get a reasonably good idea of where their signal energy was actually going. His painstakingly prepared set of angle of arrival files that modeled propagation to and from many areas allowed top stations to optimize their antenna systems to a high degree. Combined with the wide availability of software tools like EasyNet, the effect on amateur radio antenna system design was Promethean again, according to Ward Silver. Chris Tate, N6WM, the station coordinator for Radio Oakley, N6RO, the contest station of Ken Keeler, N6RO, remembered Dean as an instrumental antenna design engineer. At the station, Straw contributed massively to the antenna farm with many unique and effective designs that gives N6RO its signature punch from W6. Dean was also an expert operator, particularly in SSB, whose recordings of his ARRL sweepstakes operating trained and guided Northern California Contest Club members for years. Friend and fellow contester Dave Patton, KW9A, who also worked at ARRL headquarters with Dean, remembers him as one of the smartest, kindest, and most innovative hams I have known. On another notable D-expedition, 4M7X on Coche Island in Venezuela, Dean's switchable 10-element arrays for the high bands worked so well that his team broke the world record, despite the large antenna farm being slowly destroyed over the weekend by the remnants of a large hurricane passing by. According to Patton, the D-expedition consisted of 43 antennas and 7 complete 1,500-watt stations. ARRL FCC counsel David Siddall, K3ZJ, shared this remembrance. His contributions to ham radio and to ARRL will continue through his unmatched propagation and related terrain studies, software packages, articles, and other contributions to ARRL publications, many of which continue to be widely distributed, consulted, and used almost 2 decades after he retired from the ARRL. Dean Straw's N6BV legacy lives on through his many contributions to ham radio at ARRL headquarters and beyond, and in the countless lives he touched with his generosity, intelligence, and love. Dean shared this message when he retired from the ARRL staff. "The Lord has been good to me. How many people can truly say that their vocation has been their beloved avocation too? My wife has consistently maintained over the years, you're having entirely too much fun in this job."
A Soyuz 2.1B launch vehicle with a frigate upper stage launched successfully on December 28th at 13:18 UTC, deploying a total of 52 satellites into orbit. The mission was operated by Roscosmos and lifted off the Vachowski Cosmodrome in eastern Siberia. The primary payload were 2 AST-T2s, Earth observation satellites. Among the secondary payloads were at least 8 satellites using amateur radio frequencies, including several that received coordination through the International Amateur Radio Union. Initial on-orbit checkout and commissioning activities are underway, with beaconing reports and operational activity continuing to be reported. QMR KWT-2, or Moon of Kuwait, is a 1U CubeSat carrying an amateur radio mission led by Oleg Rezin, R3AOR, in cooperation with the Moscow Technical University of Communication and Informatics. The satellite features a FM amateur radio transponder intended to encourage participation by students and new operators, along with a miniature camera capable of transmitting slow-scan TV images. The mission operates under the International Amateur Radio Union coordination, with a downlink on 436.950 MHz and a transponder uplink on 145.920 MHz. Maboskisi Romeo Sierra 83 Sierra is a 16U CubeSat developed by the National Research State University of Nizhny Novgorod as part of Russia's space education program. The spacecraft carries an amateur radio digital repeater supporting messages exchanged between radio amateurs worldwide, along with imaging payloads transmitting SSDV and SSTV pictures. IARU coordinated frequencies include a repeater uplink on 435.500 MHz, repeater downlink on 145.910 MHz, a telemetry and image downlink on 436.320 MHz, and an experimental X-band downlink on 10.470 GHz. Sakahub Koblabon, or RS-18S, is a 1U CubeSat developed by the Sakha Science Academy as the first satellite of the Republic of Sakha in Yakutia. The spacecraft uses a single UHF amateur radio transceiver for telemetry, command, and educational payload data, including digital transmissions and SSTV images. The satellite operates with IARU coordination, including a downlink on 437.350 MHz. Several additional satellites on the mission are reported to be using amateur radio frequencies without IARU coordination, including Polytech Universe 6, Scorpion, Luca 1, and Galapagos UTE. In addition to the amateur frequency spacecraft, the mission also deployed 3 Iranian Earth observation satellites, Paya, Zafar, and Kausar, intended for monitoring agriculture, mapping natural resources, and studying environmental conditions.
The CubeSat Developers Workshop team has opened the call for abstracts for the 2026 workshop, inviting members of the CubeSat and small satellite community to submit presentations covering mission concepts, technical developments, and operational results. The CubeSat Developers Workshop is an annual 3-day global small satellite conference hosted at California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo, California. The event brings together students, researchers, educators, and industry professionals from around the world to share experience and lessons learned across the CubeSat mission lifecycle. In recent years, the workshop has attracted more than 600 participants representing over 50 countries. The 2026 workshop will include both oral presentations and poster sessions. Poster sessions provide an interactive forum well-suited to early-stage mission concepts, subsystem development, and student projects, while oral presentations focus on more mature missions, flight results, and in-depth technical analysis. Abstracts are welcome on topics spanning the full CubeSat mission lifecycle, including mission design, hardware and software development, integration and testing, operations, and on-orbit performance. Submissions that emphasize lessons learned, innovative approaches, or practical operational experience are particularly encouraged. The CubeSat Developers Workshop 2026 will take place April 14th through the 16th, 2026 in San Luis Obispo, California. Abstract submissions must be received no later than 11:59 p.m. Pacific Time on Monday, January 5th, 2026. Participant registration is now open with early bird pricing available through February 1st, 2026. Additional information on abstract submission, registration, sponsorship, and exhibitor opportunities is available on the workshop website, www.cubesatdw.org.
Moody Bible Institute's 90.1 WMBI FM in Chicago is currently operating at 10 kilowatt transmitter power output due to interference with communications equipment at nearby Chicago O'Hare International Airport. The flagship station of the Moody Radio Network, WMBI FM ordinarily operates with 100 kilowatts effective radiated power. The issue stems back to November. The station went off the air completely after being notified by the FCC that the Federal Aviation Administration detected an aspect of its 90.1 FM signal causing minor interference with local air traffic control. Moody said that the FAA recently introduced communications that are highly sensitive to background noise. As a result, WMBI must filter out spurs as low as 80 dB at 133 MHz.
John Barchender, N1GNB, better known in the amateur radio community as John B., owner of Quicksilver Radio Products, passed away on October 25, 2025. He was first licensed in 1989 and held an amateur extra class license. Prior to founding Quicksilver Radio Products, he was the ARRL advertising manager for 4 years. He is survived by his children, Elizabeth and Jay, and his brother Michael. Quicksilver Radio Products, the popular Connecticut-based business, is now relocated to Pennsylvania as a division of the New Holland Radio Shack. The death of the popular and personable radio amateur also drew concerns among loyal longtime customers that his business would permanently close its doors. Well, in late December, an announcement appeared in QRZ.com, in the forums there and on Facebook, that the company said it was in the process of moving its inventory to a new location. Quicksilver said the company was planning to have a presence at HamCation in Orlando, Florida in February. The business website, QSradio.com, is also operating again. Following Bart Scherer's passing, Quicksilver was closed for reorganization, but has just announced its reopening. The company's new retail store is now open in New Holland, Pennsylvania. Quicksilver's West Coast store in Anaheim, California, is still in operation.
The Intrepid DX Group has announced 23-year-old Peter Schimmelbusch, W7HPS from Rexburg, Idaho, as the winner of its 2025 amateur radio for the Greater Good competition. His proposals for the newly formed Upper Valley Amateur Radio Society, of which he is founder and president, to install a public access amateur radio station at the Madison County Sheriff's Department Search and Rescue Facility, which the department has already authorized. The Intrepid DX Group will be providing Schimmelbusch and his club an HF base station, a VHF-UHF mobile station, a VHF-UHF base antenna, coax, a power supply, and a multi-band HF vertical antenna. This year, we received a number of outstanding proposals to benefit the community through amateur radio, said Intrepid DX Group President Paul Ewing, N6PSE. You can see Schimmelbusch's entire proposal on the Intrepid DX Group Facebook page.
It's time for this week's edition of AMSAT Satellite Shorts from all over. And we begin this week with the announcement that AST Space Mobile launched Bluebird 6, the first of its next-generation satellites, on December 23rd aboard India's LV-M3 rocket operated by the Indian Space Research Organization from the Satish Dhawan Space Center. AST Space Mobile says Bluebird 6 is its largest satellite to date, featuring a deployable antenna substantially larger than those flown on its earlier spacecraft. Bluebird 6 is designed to support the company's planned space-based cellular broadband network that would connect directly to standard mobile phones without additional hardware. The launch marks the beginning of a new satellite series, with the company planning to deploy dozens more spacecraft in 2026. AST Space Mobile previously demonstrated its technology using the Blue Walker 3 prototype, including a successful 5G call to an unmodified smartphone in 2023. Earlier AST Space Mobile satellites have drawn concern from segments of the amateur radio community due to their use of frequencies in the 430 through 440 MHz band for telemetry and control. The company has said it's coordinating with regulators as it expands its constellation. Next, UK-based company SpaceForge has successfully generated plasma aboard its Forge Star 1 satellite, marking a milestone in commercial and space manufacturing. The demonstration establishes Forge Star 1 as the first free-flying commercial spacecraft to operate as a semiconductor manufacturing platform in low Earth orbit. SpaceForge says the plasma test confirms that the extreme conditions required for gas phase crystal growth can be created and controlled on an autonomous satellite. The work builds on earlier research conducted aboard the International Space Station and is aimed at producing advanced semiconductor materials in microgravity. SpaceForge is focusing on wide and ultra-wide bandgap materials such as gallium nitride and silicon carbide, which are used in power electronics and advanced communication systems. The company says microgravity conditions may enable cleaner crystal growth that is possible than on Earth. Data from the Forge Star 1 mission will be used to inform future in-space manufacturing missions. The satellite is expected to complete its mission with a controlled atmospheric reentry as part of a planned end-of-life demonstration. And finally, South Korean startup InnoSpace failed in its first orbital launch attempt on December 22nd when its Hanbit Nano rocket lifted off from Alcantara Space Center in Brazil. The launch marked the first ever orbital launch attempt by a South Korean commercial company. Hanbit Nano is a two-stage launch vehicle designed to place small satellites in low Earth orbit from equatorial launch sites. The rocket experienced an anomaly and crashed back to Earth about 1 minute after liftoff, according to tracking reports. Hanbit Nano was carrying multiple small satellites on the spaceward mission, including the amateur radio CubeSat Solara S2. The mission also represented a milestone for international cooperation, with Brazil hosting the inaugural launch attempt of the South Korean-developed rocket. InnoSpace did not immediately disclose the cause of the failure and ended its webcast shortly after the incident. The company has said it will analyze the failure as it continues development of its launch vehicle family.
For the first time, YOTA Camp will have a theme for the week. The theme will be space. For the best chance at being selected, applications should be submitted by 2359 UTC by the 15th of the month, 2026. Campers will be selected by the working group and notified by February 1. The application process is free. A $100 U.S. deposit is required upon acceptance. Should a potential camper be unable to pay the $100 deposit, he or she may apply for a scholarship or a waiver. Campers are also responsible for their own arrival and departure transportation to the camp's location. Travel assistance may also be available. Up to 50 campers will be accepted. Priority will be given the first-time attendees and youth residing outside of the USA. Only a limited number of returning attendees will be accepted and must serve as leaders during the camp. Leaders will be selected based on staffing needs to facilitate this year's session choice. Huntsville Amateur Radio Club is the local host for the 2026 camp. For details about the camp, visit the camp webpage at youthontheair.org.
ARDC, the Amateur Radio Digital Communications Foundation, awarded more than $4 million in grants in 2024, according to tax filings released in mid-November 2025. Grants ranged from multiple $1,000 donations to various organizations to help programs related to amateur radio and digital communications technology, to major grants to support the Courage Kenny Handyham program, an organization supporting amateur radio and assistive technology for people with disabilities, the Asociación Civil Artermundi in Cordoba, Argentina, to strengthen community mesh networks, the University of Victoria in British Columbia to create a modular cube satellite radio, and $507,500 to fund the ARDC scholarship managed by the ARRL Foundation Scholarship Program.
Amateur television operations aboard the International Space Station received a significant upgrade on December 22nd, when an HDMI converter was installed on the ARRIS HamTV system. The new hardware expands video capabilities for HamTV and supports the use of a broader range of onboard cameras during future educational contacts. The installation was performed during scheduled maintenance activities by NASA astronaut Chris Williams, Kilo Juliet 5 Golf Echo Whiskey. ARRIS reported that the HDMI converter can generate a video test signal when the system is in standby mode, providing clear visual indication of system readiness and video path functionality. The December upgrade builds on HamTV's return to operation earlier in the year. The HamTV unit was installed aboard the ISS on July 29th by astronaut Johnny Kim, Kilo Juliet 5 Hotel Kilo Papa, after several years of offline for repairs. Following installation, ARRIS confirmed acquisition of signal reports from amateur stations as the system began transmitting a carrier on 2395 MHz, with continued testing through August confirming stable carrier operation. Those efforts led to successful video use during an educational contact on October 18th with scouts in the United Kingdom. During that event, Johnny Kim, Kilo Juliet 5 Hotel Kilo Papa, answered student questions while appearing live on station via HamTV. Pre-contact testing included tone and color bar transmissions, followed by a successful live video downlink from the ISS. In the days following the December 22nd maintenance activity, amateur observers again reported reception of color bar test signals, confirming proper operation of the video chain. On December 23rd, amateur operator Scott Chapman, Kilo 4 Kilo Delta Romeo, reported successful reception of HamTV test video during an ISS passover North America, documenting decoding of a video test pattern using a 1-meter S-band dish. HamTV uses a DVB-S digital amateur television transmitted on 2395 MHz, and reception typically requires a 2.4 GHz capable antenna, a low noise amplifier, and a compatible DVB-S receiver or software-defined radio. With the HDMI converter installed and testing complete, ARIS has indicated that further HamTV activity is expected during educational contacts in 2026. For those interested in receiving HamTV, Scott Chapman has published a community guide describing one method of decoding and recording HamTV test video using SatDump and VLC media player. Additional technical background, reception reports, and ground station information are maintained by the British Amateur Television Club.
The 52-week Ham Challenge returns for 2026. This year's challenge consists of weekly exercises ranging from making a QSO on Echolink to eliminating a source of interference. This is meant to inspire you to extend your horizon in amateur radio by weekly challenges through the year that touch all aspects of ham radio and related fields. A lot of the challenges may be trivial for some participants because it is what they do all the time, but very challenging to others. Participants of the challenge are encouraged to help each other in any way possible. Participants are encouraged to post progress through social media using #HamChallenge. An IRC channel is also available. The 52-week Ham Challenge is created by Fabian Kurtz, Delta Juliet 5, Charlie Whiskey, and is available on the web at hamchallenge.org.
A Minnesota amateur radio club is honoring the U.S. Army chaplain whose prayers provided courage and faith to General George Patton's troops during World War II. He also happened to be a licensed ham who became a silent key in 1995. Father George Metcalf, who held the call sign W0JH, also held faith in troops he served under General George Patton, and the favorable weather would aid the Allies' efforts during the Battle of the Bulge. With the help of a fellow military chaplain, the priest offered a prayer for the Allies to enter the key battle under fair skies. In the decade following the war's end, the Episcopal priest made his home in what is now the Bellwin Conservancy Savannah Center in Afton, Minnesota. On January 9th, 10th, and 11th, the Stillwater Amateur Radio Association will be on the air from the priest's former home to honor him and will be using his original call sign. They'll be joined by Father Brian K. Burgess, KD4UTL. An Episcopal bishop will also be visiting from Illinois to operate with the hams and officiate on Sunday at a local service.
The Rebel DX Group has announced that they expect to face fully restricted physical access to Conway Reef, but are nonetheless hoping to activate the site before the new limitations begin. The team posted a notice on various DX News sites saying, "We are quickly organizing a trip to 3D2/C before the new restrictions take place. The team reports that Fiji's Ministry of Fisheries will soon designate the site as a restricted access zone." No specific dates were provided in their announcement, either for the activation plans or the start of the restrictions. A trip to Conway Reef would mark the fourth return there. The Rebel DX Group activated it in May of 2024 as 3D2CCC, facing numerous challenges, including very windy conditions and issues with birds interfering with the equipment.
The largest commercial satellite to ever be in Earth orbit has been launched. It's the first of a planned constellation by AST Space Mobile, a Starlink rival that was recently granted use of amateur radio frequencies by the FCC. The huge satellite is called Bluebird 6, and it was launched on December 23rd from India's Satish Dhawan Space Center, blazing the path to the so-called next-generation constellation of space-based cellular broadband satellites by AST Space Mobile. The satellite features an array of antennas which, when deployed, compares in size to the dimensions of a tennis court, 693 square feet or about 64 square meters. The project, by the Texas-based startup, is considered a direct rival to SpaceX's Starlink constellation. Last September, the FCC's Space Bureau granted AST Space Mobile limited use of frequencies in the amateur band between 430 and 440 megahertz. Permission was given on an emergency basis only, after overwhelming objections raised by ham radio operators and amateur radio societies worldwide. They argued that alternate UHF frequencies are available for the satellite's telemetry, tracking, and command functions.
The small Balkan nation of Montenegro finished 2025 by taking a history-making step into space with the launch of its first satellite. Weighing just under 2 kilograms, the 1U CubeSat began its journey on December 28th aboard a Soyuz carrier rocket from Russia's new cosmodrome near the border with China. A project of Montenegro Space Research, it is designed to collect data for transmission back to Earth. On board are a high-resolution camera, solar panels, and a variety of sensors, all designed to function throughout the satellite's 3-year mission in low Earth orbit. Montenegro's Amateur Radio Association announced that it received its first telemetry signals from the satellite on December 31st, adding that it planned to donate an antenna to the Space Research Organization for everyday reception. The satellite has been named Lucha, which is Montenegrin for light.
And finally this week, the letter X is often used to symbolize a crossing, and One Hand Club based in Japan is putting that symbol to good use, helping new CW operators across the barrier of fear. The activity is called CQXing, or CQ Crossing, and it was launched on January 1st by the A1 Club to help new CW operators overcome their fear of having QSOs longer than the customary short exchange. Described as a crossing to meet more CW friends, the activity centers around 7.030 MHz, particularly on Fridays from 1300 to 1500 UTC. The International Club, which is based in Japan, said in its announcement that while a simple exchange of RSTs is often fine, amateurs engaging in CQXing are leaving the opportunity open for something a bit longer, even a rag chew. The club said that calling CQ in this manner conveys our shared desire to operate with consideration and respect, making it easy for CW beginners to participate. Any ham hearing the message CQA1CXing is welcome to reply. A speed of between 10 and 20 words per minute is suggested. To find out more about the A1 Club, visit a1club.org.
This Week in Amateur Radio is holding open auditions for news anchors for the weekly national worldwide amateur radio news service. If you have a good radio voice and can reliably read provided news copy, we are looking for you. This, of course, is an all-volunteer position. An amateur radio license is not required. You must have a high-quality microphone, headset mics are not used, and be familiar with audio editing software to record and edit your finished news stories before uploading. If you would like to try out for a weekly or bi-weekly anchor position with North America's premier amateur radio news on air and podcast, please send an email to our producer, George, W2XBS. You can include a sample MP3 of yourself reading news copy sent as an attachment to W2XBS77@gmail.com. That's whiskey, the number 2, X-ray Bravo Sierra 77 @gmail.com. Be sure and use Anchor Audition in the subject line. Please include your phone number and a good window of time for a callback to discuss your submission and our operating logistics to see if This Week in Amateur Radio is a good fit for you. We hope to hear from you soon. This Week in Amateur Radio is heard on nets and repeater systems all around the U.S. and around the world on great operations like WA0RCR from the center of the U.S., Wentzville, Missouri, where This Week in Amateur Radio is proud to be part of the legendary Gateway 160-meter net report each weekend. Many of the news and information items heard in this edition of This Week in Amateur Radio have been provided by the American Radio Relay League, the ARRL Audio News Service, and the ARRL Letter, AMSAT, the Radio Amateurs of Canada, the Shortwave Listening Post, the Federal Communications Commission, the Radio Society of Great Britain, and Ofcom, the South African Radio League, the International Amateur Radio Union, the Wireless Institute of Australia and the Australian Communications and Media Authority, the New Zealand Association of Radio Transmitters, the Amateur Radio Newsline, the Rain Hamcast, Eric Guth, 4Z1UG and QSO Today, QRZ.com, the International Telecommunications Union, the 425DX News, Parks on the Air, and the Soda Reflector, and various news sources on the Internet.
With special thanks to all our weekly news sources and to you, our listeners, that wraps up this edition of This Week in Amateur Radio. If you would like to write to us, you can find everything you need, including archive editions of the news service, at our website at twiar.net. And now, for all of us at This Week in Amateur Radio headquarters and all our news team around the world, this is Will Rogers, K5WLR in Fayetteville, Arkansas, wishing you 73.